Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Got to get my robe on.
No, isn't that interesting? I don't have my robe. Well, one, it's kind of, I'm in my basement and it's not near as cold. So it's going to be interesting.
It's cold in my closet, so.
Aw.
Get it out.
You might send the cold vibes my way. Now I'm going to get cold. I have a little heater, though, down here just in case.
That's good. I might have to whip mine out. I'm going to wait a couple minutes to see if we have some more people hop on because I have a lot of questions that I want to have y'all discuss with us tonight. But we're going to be talking about I'll be discussing chapter 3, and then Cassie and Ashley will be talking about chapter 4.
Mm-hmm. Aw.
Okay, I'll give it one more minute, and then we'll let people go back and watch the recording if they hop on a little bit late. But I have to say, this chapter, talking about character and integrity, was something that I thought would be kind of a no-brainer. I know a lot of us are believers and try and follow Christ, so I thought, we're just doing all that stuff anyway. And man, I took a lot of notes on this chapter because he just said a lot of things that kind of blew my mind. So I'm excited to see what you guys have thought about it. All right, well, I'll hop on in. For those of you who may not have had a chance to look at your chapter yet, and I'm going to move it back to speaker view for now. And I'm going to go ahead and mute any of you who are not muted. So if you need to talk, feel free, and you unmute yourself. But I wanted to run through some of his first things he talked about were 15 diseases of leadership, and they were all character flaws. And a lot of them were things that I did not really think before this chapter of as being a character flaw. It's not something that I really thought of as an integrity issue. But I love how this chapter, last week, Jana talked about how influence is really the building block of all of this. And then we talked about knowing your priorities. And I love how both of those chapters really just flow into this one. Your character and your integrity have a lot of focus on your influence and your priorities, those two kind of coming together. So I wanted to refresh our memory on some of these 15 diseases of leadership and see if any of these stood out to you guys as kind of a surprising way to look at integrity. Some of them surprised me. So the first one is thinking that you are indispensable, thinking that you are, he phrased it as immortal, but I saw this as a mom, thinking, if I go on a trip that nobody can replace me, or on a team call, nobody can replace me, thinking that you're indispensable, you cannot be replaced. That is the opposite of being humble. So that can be a character flaw. Busyness, which I know we all struggle with, and that's something that as Christians, I don't think we always see as an issue with our integrity. Having, he called it mental or emotional petrification. This is just being frozen, like you can't feel, you can't think. And this took me back to some of our Enneagram descriptions of being, frozen into inaction or frozen into not knowing what emotion to have, and that makes you be heartless. That can be a character issue. But then again, excessive planning, again, character issue. You are showing that you can't be flexible, you can't roll with the punches. And I saw that more as just like a personality quirk or poor decision making, but not necessarily integrity being called into question there. But then on the other side, I love how a lot of these are back and forth, kind of opposites, but being not coordinated enough, not planning enough, that can lead to having your team not being involved. He said for number 6, I love this, leadership, Alzheimer's disease. If y'all remember reading that, just forgetting who poured into you to get you to where you are today. Number 7 was rivalry or wanting the glory for yourself. I think that's a more common one that we see as an integrity issue. And I liked how you phrased number 8, schizophrenia, where you're leading a double life. You're showing your face as one thing, but then behind the scenes, you're totally either a hypocrite or just doing something totally different than you're preaching. Number 9, backbiting or grumbling, just talking ill of others. And then that was similar also, I thought, to number 12, which was being harsh with the people who are under you. 10 was idolizing your superiors, trying to gain favor with your superiors, and so you kind of neglect the ones under you. And being indifferent towards the people under you, not having any care for what they want. That's number 11, a disease of integrity. 13, I thought was like kind of out of place. It talked about hoarding. It's like, well, this could be material things that you're trying to hoard, that's a character flaw, but at the same time, this could be hoarding accolades, hoarding positions, hoarding important jobs because that makes you appear better. And 14 is putting your little clique ahead of everybody else, that you're just promoting your people who you care about the most. And then the last one he talked about was self-exhibition, that you are showing off all of your recognition, showing off all of your power. So I loved how he phrased those as almost like a temperature check for us. And he said, to what extent asking yourself these questions will give you a good check on how you're doing with these diseases. He said, to what extent do I feel superior to people on my team? To what extent do I show that I'm imbalanced in my work with the rest of my life? And to what extent do I take away from human intimacy, from my relationships, and replace that with a sense of being formal and too professional? To what extent do you rely on only plans and you neglect intuition or improvisation? And he asked, do you recognize your mentors? Do you take too much satisfaction in your perks, your privileges? Do you isolate yourself from your customers, from your team? That's something that I've struggled with during hard seasons of life. I never really saw that as a character flaw. I just was like, I'm overwhelmed. My 9 self would just kind of withdraw and shut down. That's a character flaw that he brings up. To what extent do you put your own success ahead of the success of others? And to what extent do you cultivate a fun and joy-filled work environment? Do you see that as something that you need to focus on as part of your character? To what extent do I share my rewards and my praise? And to what extent do I behave in ways that seem kind of egocentric to others around you? So I wanted to hear from you guys and put it back on the gallery view where I can see all of you guys, because if you would like to chime in and want to raise your hand, I'll unmute you, or you can unmute yourself. But did one of those stand out to you as a surprise, of something you hadn't really thought of as being a character issue? Did anyone have surprise over one or the other? Let's see. Okay, Bonnie.
Well, obviously, when he uses the word hoarding, that's not a great word. But when it talks about accumulating material goods to seek security, like I mean, I'm an accountant. We love security. It's the responsible thing to do. And so the fact that he used security as a character flaw was really interesting to me.
Yeah, that stood out to me too. It's not, being secure is not necessarily a sin or a character flaw, but when you are so consumed with that you're neglecting other things around you, or that you are, piling your life with things and it's shoving others out or taking away from others, then definitely, yes, it can become a big issue. Any others that kind of jumped out at you guys? I kind of touched on a couple of mine that surprised me. The busyness. I know we always hear busyness is a foothold for the enemy to distract us from the things that are important. I know Carissa always talks about the book Essentialism, and that was pretty groundbreaking for me in reining in the busyness, because it does make you, again, neglect some of those important things around you. So that's one. If you hadn't thought about that one before, that's, I think, one a lot of us can battle just as Americans, and even in the church. We take on way too much sometimes.
So you can't see my face. I'm definitely in a bubble bath right now. But you're welcome. So I had a great conversation with somebody today about busyness and I don't have time and what we value. And busy is a word that I am actively trying to take out of my vocabulary, because everybody's busy and I'm terrible about it, right? Like, oh, I'm so busy. Okay, no, my schedule's full, but it's full of the things that I value. I value my time with my family, my lunches where my extended family come over. I value my time with my team. I value a lot, like I'm sure most of you do. And I'm so tired of hearing people say, well, I just don't have time for that. No, you do. It's just not a priority for you. So I'm actively trying to take that word out, busy and I don't have time. And we're trying to teach that to our kids too. Like, don't tell me you didn't have time to make your bed. Tell me it wasn't a priority, because you had just as much time this morning as I did. We both got up at the same time. We both left the house at the same time. I prioritized my time differently than you. So anyway, I just thought that kind of came up in a conversation today with the potential, and I just thought that was very enlightening. So
yeah, I love that. I think Ashley commented here instead saying, that's not in my time budget, which is so true. Our time is exactly like our money. You have to tell each dollar where to go. You have to tell each hour where to go. And so you're choosing to do different things with your time is the correct answer, rather than I'm too busy. The ones that really stood out the most to me, I think, were the mental and emotional petrification, just being frozen. Because sometimes I feel like, what if you don't know what to do or what to feel? But as a leader, you have to do something. You have to say something, reach out to people, even if, for one funny example, a family member recently shared with the rest of our extended family that she was pregnant, expecting out of wedlock. And there are, I think, maybe 4 great aunts and grandmothers that are all very much traditional, not okay with that. And so one of them just immediately, they were just spouting off the first thing in their head. And then she looked at her cousin and said, well, what do you think about this? And you have that one split second where your brain is still processing. You don't know what to think or say or do. But that one thing that you say is going to be with that person the rest of their life. And it's going to taint your relationship forever. So as leaders, we have to we have to be a step ahead. We have to be a little bit above in the game. There was one quote that really stood out to me that I loved. He said, the heightened influence of a leader magnifies your impact on others. Because you are a leader, your influence is greater. Even if, we talked about the levels, even if you're on a certain level with that person, just because you do have that position, you do have a little boost. So you need to be taking that very seriously and thinking of some sort of part in your character that you're going to just go with and run with if you're going to be compassionate to people or have some answer to be able to come back to people with. All right, another aspect of this chapter that I wanted to see your thoughts on, I loved these 4 dimensions of character that he talked about. And again, there were a couple of these that I thought, wow, I hadn't really thought of that. When I think of character, I think more about telling the truth, treating people nicely, things that Jesus did. He treated people well. But the 4 dimensions he mentioned in the book were authenticity, self-management, humility, and courage. And I wondered, among these 4, if you could tell one of these that you struggle with. I feel like all of us could probably rank these 1 to 4 of like our strongest area of character down to our weakest. I think for me, I have no problem being authentic with people. I don't think I have a lot of problem being humble, but I think courage can be a struggle for me. And I think that self-management is definitely probably my biggest struggle of these 4. So those were good for me to look at and break them down in that way and see what areas may be lacking for me in those 4. I wondered if any of these stood out to you that you could pinpoint, okay, that might be somewhere I need to grow a little.
I'll share. I like authenticity really stuck out as a 3. I like that line where he said God would rather us walk with an occasional limp than a constant strut. I was like, oh, maybe I need to limp a little more. So feel free to like knock my legs out from under me if I ever need it. But that one really stuck out to me, that I just need to find more opportunities to be authentic and really like seek those out in my Facebook posting and try not to act so like I got everything figured out. So that one was a good one, a good reminder for me. And I think I need to put that quote like on my screen.
That is such a good one. I wrote that one down too. And I love, he said a whole lot about authenticity and not quite as much about some of the others. And I feel like that's a struggle for a lot of us to know where that line is. He talked about living in between the lines, the line of success and the line of failure, and how the line of success just looks like, it's the highlight reel that most of us see on Facebook. And I've told people before, I like to see my Facebook memories popping up each year, and I like them to be the fun things. So I put that on there for me. But at the same time, I have an audience. And if all I'm posting is my highlight reel and all they see is this line of success, I'm not going to appear real to them. Everybody knows you're not in the highlight reel 100% of the time. But then again, if you're constantly just posting your failures line, then you're going to have no credibility with people, no respect from people, no way to inspire people. So you have to find that good balance. And I love how he says that to show your struggles with grace for yourself, that can encourage other people. And to not be afraid, to have that courage to be proud of your story. I love something, I think I may have mentioned this on here, but it might have been somewhere else. Jessica Hepley had said she had this hang up about sharing a certain thing that had happened in her Plexus journey. And this is recently, and we know she's like the queen of overcoming fears, and she just had this certain thing she was having a hard time sharing about. And so she realized one day, this is not her story. This is God's story. So why should she not have the boldness to share about what God has done? And that's what I think is so true for the rest of us. We have to have the boldness to share the beauty of God's story, and to find, I love how in the book he talks about the mosaic, that the beauty of the mosaic comes from the brokenness of these other things. So finding both of those and marrying them, that is something that can be so hard to do. But I think especially as marketing professionals and as leading a team, we have to find that middle of the road for them. So that was another question that I had. I wondered if any of you could think of specific ways to do that effectively, because I really think this is something the majority of us lean towards one or the other. We lean more towards sharing the failures or more towards the successes, and it's hard to find the middle of the road. So does anybody have any ideas for that, or even an example of a time that they feel like they did a good job of finding that authenticity in that middle? Oh, and yeah, Carissa just said Cassandra Haw also today just posted the same thing. I'm guessing because she had spent time with Jessica Heffley, to pass that along to her too, that this is God's story in your life. So we should share what God is doing. And so I'm glad a lot of people are having that breakthrough right now, which is so exciting. So I will give one example just because, again, this popped up in my memories on Facebook, but this may have been a year ago. I saw a post that I had made about, I think my kids had been up sick for 2 or 3 nights, and I had just decided I was going to make a healthy dinner even though I didn't feel like it. And so I made like this delicious organic meal in my Instant Pot, and then as I was going to put it away in the fridge late after I got everybody to bed, I dropped it all over our floor, and next to the hallway it went all over on the carpet. So I was up till like 1 a.m. scrubbing the carpet. And so, I was sharing this moment that was not stellar. I had made a flub. My life is not picture perfect. But then being able to either find some humor in it or to say, but I'm thankful that tomorrow will be a day that I get some rest, finding some sort of silver lining in it, or just saying, using that as a way to connect with other people. And then I know also a lot of us have had some hard seasons through the winter with illness and different things. And there were a lot of days this winter, a lot of y'all may not know this, but we had 8 solid weeks where one member of our family at least was sick. So I was stuck at home for 8 solid weeks this winter. And that was a large factor in my husband deciding to go part-time because we were Satan was just smashing us down because the depression and loneliness and all of that was taking control. And so I just didn't post a lot during that time. I would just find, a song lyric that was from church. I would post that. Like, I didn't need to be airing all of my depression every day for 8 weeks on Facebook. That would have seriously hurt my credibility. And now to be able to come on the other side and say, we overcame that. Our Plexus products we're so grateful they kept the other 5 of us well every week. So there are lots of those moments you can find those silver linings. Okay. Let me check my notes. There are a couple more things that I wanted to have on here, and then we'll pass it on over to Cassie and Ashley. Let's see. I loved where he talked about, again, the self-management. This is going to be part of our homework. He talked about setting up these guardrails, knowing this is me, this is what I stand for, these are my non-negotiables. Think about when you have tons and tons of money. How are you going to handle that? So that when you have it, then at that point, it's just follow through of doing the decision you already made. I think that's so powerful. If you're envisioning it now, playing those scenarios through your head now, when you get there, it's going to be easier to stick with what you already decided previously. I know we've done this. We talk about guardrails a lot in our marriage. This was something my husband and I talked about early on, was not like riding somewhere alone in a car with someone of the opposite sex, or we have Wednesday night small group. And so if I show up and their spouse isn't there and nobody else is there yet, we'll wait to go inside because we just don't want there to be any foothold for Satan, whether that's a temptation or not. No appearance of evil. So knowing ahead of time, way before we had married couple friends, that was something that was going to be in our guardrails, it's just easy to stick with that now. We have a lot of people in this season of Plexus that have gone to other companies, and that's something to think about. What would you do if a company approached you and said, I will give you this amount of money if you will come over to our company and bring your teammates? How would you handle that? Thinking of these scenarios ahead, and knowing that even if it's a decision that will benefit you as a leader, you're called to choose the option that's going to benefit your team the most and the people under you the most. So one thing that I thought about, and this is, there are times, I know a lot of us on this team have pushed for rank advancements, and there's a time and a place for everything, where if you're hitting a quick rank advancement, signing people up without welcome packs is a great option, and then making sure they get that the next month. But there are some teams that are just constantly doing that and never telling people about welcome packs, and they never get that deal. They never get those startup materials. So be thinking about, how are you going to be conducting yourself in your business? What is your business going to stand for? Who are the people you want to bless through that? And so this is one of the things, and we'll talk more at the end about it, that I want us to write it out and share with at least one person in your breakout group or on this call, a list of what are your non-negotiables. One thing from the day one when I joined Plexus, I had always said, I will never lie about a product. I mean, that's just, lying is out for me. That's a non-negotiable. So if I don't love a product, I'm just not going to talk about it. And for the most part, because Plexus is so stellar, there aren't any products that I don't feel good about promoting, which I think is also good to be solid on how, where you stand with all of that, with your character. About humility, I loved, and this is the last one, he didn't have a whole lot to say about it. Let me check up on the chat thread. Like I'm missing some good stuff in there. But I love the quote he said, that in my littleness, I have been given extravagant dignity. God looked down on us as nothing, and he imparted this huge love and this huge gift, sending his son, showing that we are super important to him. So remembering where we came from in that nothing we have is ours. Everything we have is from God, and that it's to be used for his glory. That will help to keep us humble. A part of that also, where do you seek for your validation to come from? This one was something that I thought, wow, as we are growing, as we are trying to have a bigger paycheck, more team members, more success, more praise, where are you getting your validation from? Is it from God? Are you looking to him and saying, okay, I'm doing what's right in his eyes? Or are you seeking to gain respect from your peers or from your Facebook audience or your family? Think about whose opinion has the most weight on your actions and on your character. Okay, I'm going to double check and make sure. One more thing, I did want to say this about courage too, is that courage is what makes character possible. It empowers us to do what's right in the face of fear or uncertainty or fatigue. And you think about when you're a brand new parent and you're exhausted, like that is when your true self comes out. And if you are strong enough, you have enough grit to still be a decent person during those times when life is hard or you're going through grief. And we don't have to be perfect all the time, but our courage is what makes us be strong and be leaders and still have that integrity when it's the hardest. So knowing that trials and suffering, that's what's going to really bring our character to the forefront. All right, so I loved this other part because this is something that I've struggled with a lot, that, I am not qualified to speak to this, or maybe I haven't reached the Jessica Heffley level of paycheck yet, so I can't really brag on that because that's not my experience. But this really struck me in the book where he talked about this exact thing. He said, sometimes as a leader, you're called to take people where you have not gone before. And sometimes as a leader, you're called to talk beyond where your feet have walked, because you have to cast that vision into others. And you may have to teach someone. As an example, Carissa going to Diamond before me, there have been times I've had to encourage her, even though I haven't been there yet. So that was something that gave me peace of mind to know that that is showing character. It's not being fake. It's not being, overreaching your boundaries or something. But as a good leader, we may sometimes be called to do that, and that does show courage and that does show strength. All right, so let's see. Cassie and Ashley, did we want to go ahead and tell the homework from my chapter now, or wait till the end for all of it? Okay,
You
well,
can
I
go ahead if you
got
want.
one part. So let me go ahead and share the other part. So the homework from this chapter is going to be writing down your list of non-negotiables and sharing it with someone in this group. And if you feel comfortable sharing it with your whole breakout group, I'm sure everybody would enjoy seeing that. But it's just up to what you are most comfortable with. The other part of your homework is to express to someone in your life that they are valuable to you. And I would love for one of these people to be on your team, customer, or be upline, sidelines, downlines. But then I also want you to pick somebody in your life who you have a hard time with, that you don't particularly like or care for or get along well with. And I want you to find a way this week to express value to them, of where you see their value. That was something in the book that I felt was challenging, but also a very good practice to look for the good in even the people that we don't always want to. So we'll put that with the recording when we post it. Did anybody else have any more input on chapter 3 before we move on to 4? All right, Cassie, y'all can take it away.
All right. Well, I'm excited about 4 because we're going to talk about positive change. What I really liked was the title. It says, people don't resist change, they resist being changed. And isn't that true? Sometimes we don't want to change ourselves because then we have to be vulnerable. We have to be all these things that bother us sometimes. So he talked about 4 different things for creating positive change. People feel awkward and self-conscious doing something new. 2, people initially focus on what they need to give up. And 3, people are afraid of being ridiculed. And then 4, people personalize change and may feel alone in the process. So I'm going to be calling some of you guys out because I want to be, this is the part where we're going to grow, and this is where we're going to get better, is in a group of people like this. So what was it that stuck out to you that was something that might be hard for you to change? It could be anything. Think of those things for a few seconds, and then what was it that stuck out to you on those 4 things? It could be your leadership. It could be, like for me, organization, or big calls like this, like putting myself out there and wondering if I'm going to ramble, things like that. Like, what is it that you saw in those 4 that stood out to you? Anybody? Don't forget, I'm going to call on some of you guys. Will you type the 4? Yes, I can. Or Ashley, can you type the 4 really quick? Thank you. All right, I'm calling out. I'm doing it. Elizabeth.
I was getting ready to talk. Thanks for empowering me.
You're welcome. Anytime.
I think, was it number 3 about people will ridicule me? Is that what that number was?
Yes.
Was that number 3? So, like, as a 1, I strive for perfection, even though I know that that's not possible. And so, like, posting, going live, doing live videos, even like initially for me, like coaching calls were extremely challenging for me because I wasn't able to like foresee the questions that were going to be asked or foresee the comments that were going to be made, and to put myself out there and not necessarily have like a perfect response for them, like causes me to like holds me back. So that was something that stuck out to me, and that's still a work in progress for me. And I've been doing this for 2 years. So like, I can see changes happening, but that was something that really spoke to me. And just being able to recognize that for other people and walking the walk instead of just talking the talk. It's super easy, like as a leader, to tell them to do something, but if I'm not doing it, how can I expect them to do it? Even if that means putting yourself out there and stepping outside your comfort zone to do so.
Amen. Oh my goodness. I think this is where we grow as a leader and a person, when we can identify those things and then start doing them. I'm the same as a 2 even. Like I just did a live and all I could think about was, oh my goodness, did I say the right things? Did I get what I needed across? What do people think of me? Did I ramble? Did I like those things? Like it's like a cassette tape that just keeps playing. The problem is we need to stop that cassette tape and just let it go. Like, let it go. We can sing the Elsa song if we need to, but like, it just makes it so much better when we can have that release. Anybody else have on those 4, Ashley typed them out. Did any of those stand out to you where you feel like you needed to work on or feel stuck in areas and things like that?
This is Caitlin. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I think this is related to number 2, which was the focusing on what you have to give up. I feel like coming into Plexus with having already been in a career that I really love, I struggle with this one a little bit because there is only so much time in the day, and it's hard for me, almost the hardest, when I have a lot of really good things to choose from. And so I think I do spend some time just worrying, like, okay, as my Plexus business grows, like what good thing will I have to give up, to make more time for that? Or if my other career grows, like, will I have to give something up in Plexus to make time for that? Like, it's kind of a battle in my mind of something's going to start to grow. Like right now I can fit everything in, but something's going to start to grow. And like, what will I lose? So that's kind of like something that goes back and forth for me.
Yeah. And it can be a struggle to figure out, like, how are you going to balance it all? But what's really neat is you figure out a way and God provides it, like he really does. Okay. Anybody else before I move on that stuck out to you? Caitlin, hire an assistant, Carissa says. Oh, I need assistants too. Carissa, can you hire assistants for me?
Yeah, it takes some time on the front end to coach them on all the things, but you delegate everything that's not in your gift, and you will be glad you did it. Now, I did it when I went Rudy. Hey, yeah, that's you. No, I was just pointing that out, that Caitlin, that's definitely a legitimate fear. And I think you can still, like, if you want both those careers to grow, then when they do grow and you feel like it's too much on your plate, then you assess everything that you have on your plate and figure out what requires your gifts and what you can delegate, and you take the step and you do it. I know so many diamonds who have not done it, and I'm like, y'all are crazy.
I like it.
I can speak from experience. I just did this with my full-time job. I love what I do, and it's a family-run business. But we hired somebody at my full-time job to kind of take some of the stuff off my plate so that I could do less at work, have more time to be with my kids primarily, and then, which also gives me more time to work my Plexus business. So it's possible. It took me 2.5 years to get to that point, but it became very clear from God, like, this is where you're at right now. This is the stage that you're in. And I know that if I want to go back to busting tail and working 60 hours a week, I'm sure they'll take me back.
Yeah, I agree. Oh man, I love that. This is what's great as our story is, it always evolves, and we always find those little things that, come up. Like Ashley, like this came up. She's able to find somebody to help her fill those voids and those holes so she can spend more time with her family. And it's funny, the next part that I was going to talk about was credibility and things like that. And the thing that we talked about earlier is we always feel like we have to be perfect in all of the areas, but we don't. If you're gifted at loving on people, love on people, don't feel like you have to do all of the above. And kind of like Carissa, hire it out. When I mean hire it out, find other people, sidelines even, that are gifted in that area that you can help your team with. So like, let's say, and I'll be honest, some of my team notes, I'm not great with numbers. I hate numbers. And so I have wonderful people on my team and around me that do. So if I have an issue, I'm going to reach out to that person and connect those two so that they can, I can get them the help that they need. Go on, sweetie. Nope, not right now. Sorry, mom life. Okay, so credibility. It says, what does your credibility rank with your team? Can you identify those people you need to work on improving your credibility with? What does that look like to you? So like, for instance, if you're not bonding with that person well, you feel like there's just something wrong. If just start looking for those signs that you just realize it's not right. So what is it? What was I going to say? Sorry, my mind got blank because I have a child like asking for me. What is it with your credibility that you can identify to move forward and go from there? Think of that for a second. Go. Go upstairs. No, go upstairs.
No, I'm not tired. No.
I know for me, like when I'm trying to coach somebody and I feel like they're not responding to me, that like that's a key sign that I may need to check my credibility with them. If they're not responding, and it may not be credibility, but it very well could be. Why do they not value what I'm saying? Is there something there that I'm missing? And so like Cassie was saying, like if you seem like a connection may be missing, check your credibility. If you find that your people are not coming to you for help but going to other people, check your credibility there. Again, it's not bad to have other people that they can go to, but that may be an area that you need to work on your credibility in. And you can, I think he talked about this, like you can gain credibility. Like it's not like you either have it or you don't. You can gain credibility. So that may just be like, okay, like Cassie's identified. I'm not good with numbers. Okay, she's still working on it. That doesn't mean she says, I'm never going to be good at numbers. I'm never going to try to learn this. Like she just knows that I still got to work on this. In the process of working on this, I'm going to check with someone else. So sorry, Cassie, I kind of took over while you had.
No, I'm glad you did. So thank you, because Mama Moment, obviously some of you know, sidetracks you sometimes. But I agree with Ashley. We talked about this earlier, and finding those things. So like for me, obviously I'm not great with numbers. Like you said, I'm going to still try to get better at the things that I know I lack in, because I want to gain that credibility with my team. I want them to realize, you know what, Cassie's trying to make a change, so I need to make a change. So your credibility grows when you start to try to see the things that you need to work on. So what, I might call some of you guys out. Is there any areas that you feel like you could improve on? So we'll start there really quick and see if anybody's vulnerable enough to speak up on that one.
I'll get real with y'all for a second. And I'm very curious. I know some of you I can't see, and clearly you can't see me. But by a show of hands, how many of you have actually coached up? Like, how many of you have actually talked to your upline and said any kind of leadership advice or what they could do differently, or how you feel like they could connect with you better? Cassie, you raised your hand. Tiffany, Sabrina, cool. Because I struggle with that, mostly because I came from an environment where, is this private or public? Is this going to be private? Is this a private video? Okay, so I came from an environment of a career that I loved, but that environment got very toxic the more that I tried to coach up. the more that I tried to help my leader understand how she could approach me differently instead of yelling at me every time she didn't agree with something. And I think through this journey with Plexus and understanding colors and personalities and Enneagrams, like my mind is blown, y'all, blown. And it's something that Kasha and I were talking earlier, and we were talking about what that looks like. And how could we coach up in such a way when we don't have the proven level of leadership yet, where we're not an emerald or a ruby or whatever, but we're good people and we have a lot of value. So why aren't we doing those things? We need to be bold and feel comfortable coaching up without being approached first. And that, you know, sometimes I wait for my upline to be like, oh, what do you need? What can I do to help you? Or, you know, maybe a conversation will open up where I could be like, hey, it'd really help me if you did this differently or whatever. You know what I mean? And I haven't done that because I haven't been bold yet, or it hasn't presented itself, or the yellow in me is like, I don't want to hurt your feelings. Okay, well, I'm not doing anybody any help by not speaking up. And I love my upline, don't get me wrong. Like we're talking in a big overall picture. Like we all have something to learn from each other. It doesn't matter what your rank is, because we all add so much value just in all of our different experiences in life. That's all.
Oh, so good. And I think even as a yellow or any color personality, really, the vulnerability of saying like, okay, girl, can you check my Facebook? Like some of that was our homework. Like have somebody look at your Facebook and see if there's anything that stands out, that's wrong, things like that. You want to grow. The only way you're going to grow is having outside people help you. If you just see it for yourself, sometimes you're just still in the box and you don't see what other people are seeing. So it's really good to just ask. So good point. Okay. So think of people that you had credibility with, as in there was a teacher or something that you gained credibility there, you know, from high school, or that actually paid attention to you, that stood out to you, or maybe a youth minister that saw your abilities and just made you feel you just gained so much credibility because they saw that in you. Like think of people in your life that gained that credibility. And I would love to hear if anybody had anybody that stood out to them for that.
I had a youth pastor one time that chose me to be like on a discernment team. And like that was a really big word. Like in high school, like you're on the discernment team. Like I don't even know what that means, but being given that role, that leadership role, was the first time where I feel like that seed was planted. Like you are a leader. I see you as a leader. And now you're going to help like choose where we go to on our next mission trip. And that was huge for me. Just that little seed that was planted in a very, very subtle way. Nobody voted for it. It was, he handpicked people. And so, yes, he gained a lot of credit. Like I respected him so much for that, for seeing that in me and so forth.
That's awesome. Anybody else? Anybody stood out in your life?
For me, it was my husband. Before we were married, he always really believed in me. I never really blew his mind with any of my exploits or achievements, because he just always believed I would do it or could do it. And that just gave me so much confidence, to the point he had such credibility with me that sometimes I would be more concerned about pleasing him than pleasing God. Fortunately, what he wanted me to do was also what God wanted. But he did have a lot of credibility, and it was because he always believed in me.
That's awesome. Aww. All right. Well, Ashley, I know I skipped, so I'm going to let you take and then close us up.
Yes. And so I love what Cassie was talking about. Like, as we reflect back on credibility and people that stand out to you, like, we're searching for that credibility amongst our team. So what are the little things that we can do day in and day out to gain credibility? You know, you heard me say, like, when somebody recognized the talent that I didn't even really realize that I had. You know, Cindy, like, her husband believing in her. Like, those are very simple things that we can do every single day for our team. And so that is part of our homework, is we want to challenge you to find a way to celebrate somebody on your team, celebrate their successes. And we're doing this on May 8th. So we're not really talking about any rank ups here. We're talking about maybe little things that they've done, putting time in and day out, doing their daily IPAs. Maybe it's the fact that they've been consistent on their products. Maybe it's the fact that they're sharing boldly. But find a way to celebrate a success of somebody on your team. And I mean, you can do this every day for 7 whole days. You can do it for the rest of the month, but do it at least one time. And honestly, like, try to find ways every month to celebrate every single one of your people that are working the business. And obviously, people aren't ranking up every month, guys. So find the things that they're doing well, because you noticing them is going to give you so much more credibility with them. And it's going to give them credibility as leaders in this business. Were you going to say something, Carissa?
Yeah, you're so good at noticing that.
Go for it.
That sometimes, as a red personality and a 3, which is quite a combo, I'm so achievement oriented that it can be difficult for me to figure out what to celebrate and recognize people for when I don't see what looks like fruit. And thankfully, I've been on a huge personal growth journey, so I feel like I'm really getting better at that. But just wanted to pass along that, like, earlier this week, Sherry and I were having a conversation, and she wasn't very happy with how she had done on the convention contest. But I was like, I still want to recognize what you're doing. It's a big deal. And you've been having Sherry, shout out to you. She's been having a ton of leadership breakthroughs with her team. And so my question to her was, what are some things you're proud of that you've done this spring? Because, like, I just thought that was a helpful prompt, like a helpful question. If you as a leader would like to recognize people on your team and you're kind of at a loss, to reach out and ask, what are you proud of that you've, been doing? And honestly, Sherry, I don't even know if I like mentioned in my shout out to you those specific things, but that, helps me formulate my words. So I just thought I'd pass that question along.
Yes, so true. And I want to go back to Stacy was saying, like, about like going to people above you. It's eye-opening to me as a leader to make sure I'm asking my people, what can I do to help you? Like, we've got to be asking our people. Lorelai is amazing at asking that question. She asks me that every month when we do our coaching call. What do you need from me? So let's learn from that and ask our people, like, what is it that you need from me? What am I missing? What can I help you with? So just wanted to touch on that. Okay, we are running out of time. We want to be mindful of time, but we don't want to skip that acronym, plan ahead, guys. This was so good / maybe a little overwhelming, because that's a lot of steps, but so important as we're trying to make a positive change, as we're attempting to make those positive changes. So real quick, I'm just going to run through the acronym. We've got predetermine the change that's needed. That's, I feel like we're in a 12-step program. Like, what's our problem? What are we trying to fix? Then we've got to lay out the steps. Then we've got to adjust our priorities. We've already kind of talked about priorities. So I don't feel like we need to go heavy into that, but we've got to adjust our priorities. This was huge. Notify key people. If you have not had the conversation with your family, your friends, your spouse, boyfriend, significant other, whatever it is, you need to stop everything and have that conversation. And you're probably going to have it more than once, because priorities may change, and it may be right now, hey, I need 1 day a week, or I need, 1 night a week, or 2 nights, whatever it is, but you have to have the conversation. You have to make sure that they see your goals and see where you're drawing the line. This is what I'm doing. This is where I will protect our time together. Have those conversations with your key people. As it comes to making a change in your organization, this may look like talking to your level 1s, maybe even some level 2s, and possibly a level 3, the people that you need on board to make the change. Okay, and he talked about in here that the communication should be strategic, not fair. And that's so hard, I'm sure, for you yellows. Maybe you 2s, 6s, 9s. So hard for you because you want to be fair to everybody on your team and you want to tell everybody. But that's not very strategic, because you need the buy-in of a small group of people, and then you share that. You communicate it with the larger group. But you got to start with your small group of people that are going to help get the train moving. So keep going. So we've got A is allow time for acceptance. And so once you've notified those key people, you've got to pause. You've got to pause when you roll it out to your team. You've got to give them time, especially if it's a big movement. Give them a little time. And by giving them time, it may be like throwing more belief at them during that time. Doesn't mean you just completely stop and pause, but you may pause the actual action. Does that make sense? You're throwing more belief building at them during that time, which is why a lot of times you'll see like a little teaser and then a little bit more about it, because you're trying to build that belief and allowing time for acceptance. So be very strategic in that. Learn from our leaders, because our leaders do that well. And then you're going to head into action. This is where you're getting the train moving, and once it's moving, guys, don't let it stop. Like, keep going. Expect problems. Problems are always going to come up. Try to foresee those. Explain the problems that may come up and identify them. Always answer the worst first. So don't just skip over the problems and pretend like they're not happening. Address them, but then keep moving. And then you're always pointing to the successes. We already kind of talked about that. But just make sure you're celebrating small and large. And then daily review your progress, guys. You have to have a time to reflect. So, yay, we're doing a 7-day challenge. Okay, well, we're in the middle of this 7-day challenge. How's it going? Where are we missing the boat? Is there anything that we haven't thought about? Are there problems that are coming up? Don't launch a 7-day challenge and wait until it's over to reflect on it. You could have fixed something if you would have just sat down every day with maybe your core group of people and said, okay, it's off and running. What did we forget? What did we miss? So make sure you're constantly, daily reviewing your progress. We've got a really short amount of time. I was hoping for a little bit more time to discuss, but that's okay. I'm wondering if there's one of those letters that you're like, how do I don't even know what to do here, or yes, we did this letter and I'm so glad that we did this one because here's how it helped. Does anybody have any input? Something that's really hard as you look at those letters, or something that you're like, yes, this is why you need to do this letter. This was something that happened with us. Anybody?
Ashley, you're going to have to start calling people out.
I know. I see Kara. Kara, what do you got for me? I do it. I think I called you out last time, didn't I?
You totally did. Oh man, it's what I get for being late all the time.
I think that's why you were on my mind, because you sent me that email.
Yeah. Full honesty, I'm completely ill prepared. I only got halfway through my study this week. My husband had food poisoning for 4 days in total, so I had no time to work then. And then as soon as he was well, he's been on the campaign trail. So I'm way behind. But continue. You have to pick somebody else.
Okay, not a problem. Michelle, you got something for me? What
Did you
happens when
see
you have
my
a
text?
I didn't get your text yet. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm doing a little bit of multitasking. All right, say it again for me.
Okay, so what, like, of those letters, the plan ahead acronym, what, like, jumps out to you as, like, something that's, like, super important, something that you struggle with doing but you know is important?
So I feel like I will start with great plans and I could line it all up and it looks good on paper. And then when it comes to like the actual production part and the like execution of all those things, it either becomes super overwhelming and I literally can't just start one of them. If I just started one, I could finish one, but I think I look at them as a whole and get super overwhelmed. I recognize that in so many areas, not just Plexus, but in my teaching career as well. And so then that circles back because I read whichever John Maxwell one it is, 5 Levels of Leadership. And then where I get stuck in level 3, the production level, where like level 2, like the connection, the relationship, all of that, it is spot on 100%. Like I could rock that day in and day out. So it's almost like a fraction of a bit comforting listening tonight when you just talk about like, because I have a hard time thinking that I need to do it all. And it's not just that I feel like I need to, I feel like I want to. But like just listening how we can truly gain from each other's strengths. And like there are things that Sabrina has walked onto this team and like just her number sense, like Ashley's crazy numbers, like she gets all that. I get the numbers, but then again, I get it and then I can't put it all into action. So like just kind of piecing all those things together. But yeah, I guess I don't know if consistency is the right word or if it's really truly the actual like action piece.
Yeah, I would almost wonder, do you feel like you don't have your key people in place to help move the train? Like you've got the plan there, it sounds like you've got the steps. Possibly it could be a little bit of adjusting priorities and making sure that like you have priorities and not have too many things going at once. And then a little bit of like surrounding with the key people.
Yeah, that quote, I can't remember where you shared it from or whatever, the whole, or from, maybe it's from this. I feel like I get them all so scattered. But the whole part about schedule your priorities instead of prioritize your schedule, that junk has haunted me all week to the point where I am angry, like legit angry. Like, yeah. So.
We are all a work in progress. So thank you so much for sharing, Michelle. I want to be mindful of everybody's time, and it is 9:33. So I hope you were encouraged by Michelle sharing that. I think that a lot of people struggle with that, and I would just encourage you to take a look at each one of these steps and see where you, like an honest reflection, where are you missing? If you feel like you need to go above and say, help me walk through with this, where am I missing the boat here? What we want you to do for homework, and again, we'll type this all up, is, sorry, my dog, is figure out, identify a change that needs to be made in your Plexus business. So predetermine the change that needs to be made. Lay out the steps and notify the key people. So we're going to get you started in here for homework. You need to go through that whole acronym, but we want to encourage you to at least get it started. We know to do all of that in 1 week would be a little bit overwhelming. So let's predetermine the change, lay out the steps, notify key people, and then going back, make sure you celebrate someone's success on your team in this next week. So thank you so much. Sorry for going 4 minutes over. This study is amazing. We will see you guys all again next week. Check in with your breakout groups throughout the week. Bye, guys.